The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus proposed another parables to the crowd, saying, "The kingdom of heaven may be likened to a man who sowed good seed in his field. While everyone was asleep, his enemy came and sowed weeds all through the wheat, and then went off. When the crop grew and bore fruit, the weeds appeared as well. Slaves of the householder came to him and said, 'Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? Where have the weeds come from?' He answered, 'An enemy has done this.' The slave said to him, 'Do you want us to go and pull them up?' He replied, 'No. If you pull up the weeds, you might uproot the wheat along with them. Let them grow together until harvest. Then at harvest time I will say to the harvesters, first collect the weeds and tie them in bundles for burning, but gather the wheat into my barn.'" He proposed another parable to them. "The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed that a person took and sowed in a field. It is the smallest of all the seeds, yet when full grown is the largest of plants. It becomes a large bush, and the birds of the sky come and dwell in its branches." He spoke to them another parable. "The kingdom of heaven is like yeast that a woman took and mixed with 3 measures of wheat flour until the whole batch was leavened." All these things Jesus spoke to the crowds in parables. He spoke to them only in parables to fulfill what had been said through the prophet, "I will open my mouth in parables. I will announce what has lain hidden from the foundation of the world." Then, dismissing the crowds, he went into the house. The disciples approached him and said, "Explain to us the parable of the weeds in the field." He said in reply, "He who sows good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world. The good seed, the children of the kingdom. The weeds are the children of the evil one. The enemy who sows them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the harvesters are angels. Just as weeds are collected and burned up with fire, so will it be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send his angels, and they will collect out of his kingdom all who cause others to sin and all evildoers. They will throw them into the fiery furnace, where there will be wailing and grinding of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Whoever has ears ought to hear." The Gospel of the Lord. Behold a mustard seed. You see it? No, can't see it. It's very tiny. Jesus says in the gospel that it's the smallest of all seeds. If you took a ballpoint pen and made a mark on the end of your finger, that's how big this little seed is. Just a tiny little seed. But as Jesus says, it will grow one day into a great bush or a great tree. Jesus continues giving parables. We heard one last week. We're continuing through the Gospel of Matthew. Last week we heard about the sower sowing seed, and the seed went on the good ground, the rocky ground, the dry ground. And it was teaching for us as disciples to hear the Word of God and use the ears and use the eyes that God gave us to be good disciples and carry out His will. This week, in the Gospel selection that we have 3 parables, one about wheat and weeds, another about a mustard seed, and the third about yeast. As Jesus says in the Gospel, the kingdom of heaven may be likened to a farmer who goes out and sows seed in his wheat field. Well, that's all good. He's done a good job, big day, sowed the crop for this year, and he goes to bed. The only problem is in the middle of the night, someone who's an enemy, we don't know who that is, comes and sows weeds among the wheat. And so when things start sprouting up, the workers come to the farmer and say, "Why do we have weeds growing up with a wheat? Didn't you plant a good crop?" And the farmer says, "An enemy has done this. The enemy has snuck into my field and threw weeds among the wheat." In Greek, the word for weeds is zizania. Zizania, weeds. Bible scholars say that it very likely refers to a plant called darnel. Darnel is a plant in the Middle East that when you plant it and it comes up, it looks like wheat. And if you scatter it among wheat seeds, they all come up together. They all look like the same. You can't tell one stalk from the other. It all looks like wheat coming up in your field. It's only when it matures and it gets a head on it that now you know which is the wheat and which is the darnel. Darnel is very bad. If you kept the wheat and the darnel mixed up together and made flour out of it, it would make people sick. It's quite toxic. But once it blooms, once it gets its head, now you can tell the wheat from the weeds. A small child could go out and weed and take care of the weeds. It's very obvious. The wheat's the typical stalk of wheat with a head on it. The other one, the darnel, has a sort of a lacy top that's easy to distinguish. So then you can pull up the weeds very easily. And so that's what happens. The farmer waits until it all matures. At first, the servants wanted him to go do something about it. Let's go pull up the weeds. But because the darnel looks like wheat, the farmer knows, no, don't do that. You're going to destroy the wheat crop. Just leave it alone. Let it grow. It can grow together. And it'll be fine. And at the end of the growing season, we'll take care of the problem. So the enemy, whoever that is, thought that they would come and destroy this farmer's wheat crop for some reason. But instead, what happens, because the farmer waited, was patient, and waited till harvest time, so it was clear what was wheat and darnel, they could go out and take out the darnel very easily and bundle it up. And now he has fuel for the winter with the weeds. Whereas the wheat, now that they can just harvest the wheat, and it's clean wheat, and it can be put into his barn. And then we have the parable about the mustard seed. As I showed you, as you could see very well, it's the smallest of all seeds. But it grows into a bush. In the Holy Land, you can see mustard bushes. They're a good size, enough for birds to come and dwell in them. But there's also a strain of mustard that will grow into a tree 12 feet tall. So a pretty good-sized tree. So all of that little tiny seed, you go out and put that little seed in there, you're going to wait a long time to get that 12-foot tree. But you wait, and then over a long period of time, it will finally develop into the bush or the tree it was meant to be. And then we have yeast. We have a woman, in this case, takes 3 measures of flour. We don't know how much that is. I don't know how big the measure is. 3 measures of flour, and she puts yeast in it and lets it set. And anyone who does bread making knows you just let it be, put it in a warm, quiet place, and it will slowly grow. The yeast will multiply, and the dough will become puffy, ready to be made into bread. And so we have these 3 parables that are like the kingdom of heaven. What is it about them that's like the kingdom of heaven? Wheat and weeds, mustard seeds, and yeast. What the 3 parables have in common is time. They're all done in their own time. Heaven has its own sense of time. It's not done according to us. It's done according to God. God is the master builder. We as disciples are his workers. And it's not up to us to rush things along. Things will develop in their own time, just like the wheat and the weed situation, the mustard seed, the yeast. Give it time, let it work, let it go according to God's plan. It will be eventually taken care of. The harvest will occur, the mustard seed will grow into a bush or a tree, and the yeast will be made into bread. But it does in its own time. We can't make it go quicker. In our society, we're so obsessed with speed. It has to happen now. We want it now. We want it today. Maybe tomorrow, but we're just impatient people. I don't know why that is. Maybe all people are like that. But it's just, everything's got to happen fast. You have to have fast cars. You have to have fast food. You have to have fast TV shows so that everything's resolved by the end of the hour. You can't wait. Can't wait. You get little books. Don't get a big book. Get a little book. We want to get this done. Get a quick go. And for some reason, we're like that. But Jesus is telling us in the parables, don't be like that. Don't be like that. Settle down. Calm down. Take a deep breath and let God do the work. We are only the workers. We don't start it. We don't end it. It does it on its own according to God's plan. In this parish, we're here today in this beautiful church, in this parish, all done by the work of people 30, 40 years ago most of them are no longer with us. But they did that work and we are benefiting from it. This is the fruit of their labors. They never got to, many of them didn't get to see it, but we get to see it and enjoy it and benefit from it. Now we too are called to be workers in the field. We too are going to go out, do ministry, help people, reach out to people, live out our Catholic faith, experience Jesus in the gospel, in the scriptures, in the Eucharist, and all the sacraments. But what we're doing now, we may not see the fruit of it. We may not see all the good that we did today. Will we see the fruition of it? Probably not. Not much of it will go on its own, and the benefit of that will come later. People raising children could become very impatient. The kids aren't towing the line. They're not moving fast enough. You need to meet my standards, and you need to do it now and do it my way. It may take years for the kids to get to the point that you want them to be, but it needs to happen in its own time. It may be years. I had a family in Astoria when I was there. Mom was a daily daily mass goer. She was there every day for mass. And her 5 adult children, all boys or men, they had their own families. And then finally Mom died. And so we had a funeral. Had a funeral mass at the parish. The 5 sons and all of their families came. They had never been in that church. Never. From then on until I left that parish to come here, those 5 sons with their families attended Mass every Sunday. They did exactly what Mom had been wanting them to do, but she never saw it. It happened in its own time. And so we need to be patient with people, patient with children, with our friends, with the people we know. Be patient with the people on TV. Sometimes we can watch TV and get all excited, all angry. I've had people come up to me and say, "Oh, Father, I'm so angry. Why doesn't this get fixed? Why doesn't somebody do something about this?" It will. God will take care of it, but it will take God's time, not our time. And we may not see it come to a conclusion. It may happen down the road. But we know that it will come to conclusion. St. Paul assures us that all good things end okay in the end. And that's what Jesus is talking about in the gospel. In St. Paul's letter to the Romans today, he talks about the Spirit who aids our weakness, helps us to calm down, helps us to rest in the Lord. And when we struggle with that and we're not able to do that, St. Paul says the Spirit intercedes for us at a level that's inexpressible. It's almost like a deep groaning inside your body. That's the work of the Spirit. It's happening. It's even past words, but it's very deep. But it's helping us be the disciples. It's helping us to live according to God's plan. Let God be. Let God be God. He will take care of these things, and all will work out in the end. But it's not according to our time. So it doesn't help to yell and scream, jump up and down, yell at the kids, yell at this people. You'll be angry, disappointed because they're not meeting our expectations. Someday, they very likely will, maybe not a way we imagined, but it will work out. But we need to be patient and know that we may not see it work out, but we believe that God will work things out. And so like the farmer with the wheat and the weeds, the person with the mustard seed planting it, and the woman putting yeast in the flour, we too are called to give God time, live according to God's time, to relax, and as his disciples, Be open to benefiting from the work of others, knowing that we work now and others will benefit from it later. But that's how Jesus works. Jesus works with us in God's own time, and he's calling that to do that today.